Computer. There we go. All right, hi everyone. Welcome to day 3 of Transfer Student Week. And today we are thrilled to have the Reverend Nancy Victorin-Vangerud with us today. Nancy is our campus chaplain and the director of the Wesley Center for Spirituality, Service, and Social Justice. Hi, welcome Nancy. Welcome to Transfer Student
Hi,
Week.
Kelly. Hi, Kathy.
And first of all, thanks again for being a part of this, but we're asking everyone, the first question is just tell us how you've been doing these last few months in getting through all the stuff that's been going on.
Well, I'm not going to lie. There have been major challenges, but I'm on campus a couple of days a week, usually Monday and Tuesday. Today, I'm here with you all. You can see I'm in my office, so I have really appreciated being able to come to campus a bit. The other time I'm working, from home, which that was over the summer with my garden. That was kind of a real silver lining to the whole thing about being at home. I mean, I have more green beans and squash and tomatoes. I almost brought you some green tomatoes today, but
oh wow.
So I have enjoyed parts of that, but every day, I can talk about this in a little bit, but I've kept a gratitude journal, and every day there's something that I give thanks for, and happy to be alive and safe and well. And but I will confess, there are days that I feel despair. There are days I feel kind of overwhelmed. Days I feel really sad and mournful for everything that's going on around the world, sort of an existential kind of challenge to me and people I love and care for, and people I don't even know, around the world. So it's a little bit of everything. And thank you for asking. I appreciate that.
So the term wellness encompasses mind, body, and spirit. And we had a great conversation about the mind and body components with Hussein, the Director of Counseling and Health Services, on Tuesday. And we talked a lot about mental and physical health, but we didn't really touch on the spiritual component. So can you talk about what is spiritual wellness and why is it important?
Well, I appreciate that. I think maybe spirituality and wellness may overlap in some sense. It's not like I'm defining an object out there. There are lots of ways people define these modes of being, maybe. But I think in some sense, spirituality and wellness may actually seem at odds, even at times. And I think about how important our physical health is, keeping up our physical health during this time. But, if we're sick or if we feel sadness, like not to resist that, if we need to rest, if we need to take on different rhythms with our body. I don't want to get into like some behaviors are good and some behaviors are bad. Because having a good cry could actually be the most mentally and emotionally healthy thing one could do. But it's also spiritual as well, because there's so much we're sorrowing about in the world and so much beyond what I can control in my day, or a student or faculty or staff. I don't know about you all, but like, I kind of keep track. This is what I'm going to do today. This is in the morning. I set up, I have these intentions. I want to make sure I do this, and not a long list, but, and some of that is work related and some of it is physical and emotional and spiritual. So for me, spirituality is the relationship of myself in relation with all there is. Like there's a cosmic horizon to this all. There's a horizon of mystery. It's not just about me and my ego. Though myself, my identity, who I am, my ancestors, my traditions, like things that are me related, those are important. But we are related to who I am is also a we, who we are, who existence of all things. We're related to that beyond, that mystery that to me, I grew up calling that reality God. The older I get, the more I tend to think I'm relationship to that which is mystery with a capital M, and one that is not involved in rewards or punishments, but in love and compassion and healing and wholeness. And the religious traditions have been historically sort of like beautiful pots that hold people's and cultures' ways of relating to that mystery. So, I'm a Christian, I'm a United Methodist, but I'm also part of interfaith reality. Religious traditions have influenced me. I work together with Noor Mood and Rabbi Esther Adler, so there's a beingness, a we-ness that who I am is also caring about those who may be spiritually walking paths that I don't walk or know about, but I know that my future, the meaning of who I am, the purpose of who I am is bound up in their well-being too. So that's a long answer. I think of spirituality as maybe an integration of myself with all there is, that mystery that continues to care for me and others personally, calls me forward, gives dignity and my humanity as a humble and dignified sense of being. So that's to me spirituality. And that might be a little different than wellness because I'm a spiritual being even when I'm unwell. Even when I feel like I have no energy left, even when I hurt other people and other people hurt me. I think even when I feel despair, even when I feel lonely, I'm still being a spiritual being, my heart calling out for that which is greater than myself. And that might be actually where I think these are different.
Oh, yeah.
I'm giving a kind of long answer because I want to say that, like, wellness can sometimes be seen as I'm strengthening myself and disciplining myself and making myself maybe invulnerable to disease or despair, but and that's good. We that's a good thing. But at some point, we come to that place where we realize we are vulnerable beings, we're mortal beings.
So you talked a little bit about
where spirituality tries to pick it up. So
good. Okay, so you probably answered this a little bit, but mind, body, and spirit, are they interrelated?
Well, I think to set it up that way as three different things is actually not in the long run very helpful. Because I think spiritually I'm also emotional and I'm cognitive. I'm physical. That's important. That's part of my being. So it may be useful and maybe in higher education to say this is, academics, we focus on intellectual, we focus on the mind, but mind and emotion, to me, there's an integration of all this. So I want to talk about, I guess, holistic being and not partitioning when thinking like, oh, I have a spirit. I am spiritual, just like I'm emotional. I am a being that also thinks and reasons and judges, makes judgments. So Yeah, so I guess I want to see it more holistically.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah.
So Nancy, I watch way too much news these days. Way too much.
Me too.
Yeah. And I swear to God, like every minute it's like breaking news. And we live in this state of not knowing what's going to happen next. How can we become, or is it possible? How do you become more comfortable with that discomfort and the not knowing what's going to happen? Is there a way?
Yeah, that's really good. I find myself doom scrolling. You know, people talk about this. Like, at times I don't even want to look at Facebook because my dear friends are, you know, and I'm watching my YouTube clips of all the news. But actually, during this time, finding trusted news sources, I think, is really essential. Like, I watch PBS every night between 6 and 7. It's kind of like church almost for me. But like,
Right.
so maybe the question is what sources of news do you trust? And to find trusted news sources. But in terms of the certainty and the unknown, and I think this is definitely where spirituality can come into play. I mean, there's this part of being human where we do, as Homo sapiens, we organize things, we coordinate things, we have cognitively our neocortex, you know, so from a neurobiological perspective, we are beings that organize, categorize, use words, like that's a part of us. But the thing is, when we confuse that ability with, okay, my knowledge or my categories are the only way reality can be understood. And when we get in that kind of rigid sense, or I can only be happy if these things happen, or I am only a successful person if I graduate on this date, walk across this stage, or, and we all want to do well in school, but when we so categorize and determine our value based on whether things happen or not, that kind of is a cognitive and emotional rigidity. And if there's ways for us to build into our being a kind of surfing of reality, I'm an ocean person, so like, you know, surfing reality with a kind of openness. So for me, spirituality really gets to daily practices around cultivating an openness of heart and mind so that we can go with the flow, whether it's a crisis moment for us, our friends, our family, whether it's an election that turns out differently than maybe we anticipate, or so that's I think the religious traditions, you know, whether you're Christian or Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, each of those traditions has ways of cultivating openness of heart, openness of mind, so we can respond compassionately and non-violently to whatever emerges before us or within us.
Yeah, nice. Thanks.
That actually segues quite nicely into my other question, which is, are there practices that come from certain spiritual traditions that can help us stay more grounded or make sense of things?
I love this question. And I don't want to just say all religions have the same things. And I also want to be sensitive to, we don't want to just sort of cherry pick and say, oh, I'm going to take this from this and I'm going to, oh, I love what indigenous people do, or, oh, you know, in Islam, this is something that like, but there are practices, I think, that we can experience in an interfaith kind of context and with dignity and respect. Yeah. And so would you like me to just maybe mention several different specific things?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, okay. So the first thing, and this has been transformative for me, is keeping a gratitude journal. And it has two components, in the morning and then in the evening. And I'll start with the evening. Actually, a person could do this any time of day. It's developing the rhythm of when it, and one can even cultivate this so that with even sitting anywhere's breathing in and breathing out, you know, with a breath in, we give thanks, breathing out, we let go of something. But a journal, a gratitude journal, it could be as simple as every evening write down 3 things that happened today that you are grateful for, and spend a little time with it. See, what happens over time is that cultivates like a openness, that we learn to see in new ways people, places, ourselves, that it's not all doom scrolling, or we're not all just struggling, suffering people, that even in the midst of difficult times, we can see beautiful moments, whether it's, so that's why I went for a walk here at campus. Some of the trees are like just spectacular. They transfigure me. They're like, oh my gosh, the color. Like, I'm writing that down in my journal tonight. So it could be as simple as a practice every day, 3 things at night before you go to sleep that you're grateful for. And that cultivates a kind of openness in your heart and your mind. Ooh, what am I going to see today? Who am I going to meet today? How can my heart be kind to someone when I used to kind of just snip at them, you know? Or so, but a gratitude journal can also become something more like a creative writing journal, where you literally have 4 parts of a page where you and maybe in circles or divide it up, and you say, this is what I'm thankful for today. This is where I needed help today. Mm-hmm. This is was the low point of my day, and this is, so high, low, thanks, and help. And those 4 movements over time can, besides making you a very interesting journaling person, so, or you could keep a collage, you know, you could spend time, you see things, you know, cut it out, rip it out, take a snapshot of it on your cell and create like a photo journal. Julie Nearis has taught me this. Take pictures during the day of things that are beautiful or hopeful, and then create a kind of photo collage that you can scroll through at the giving thanks at the end of the day. I start the morning with thinking about, okay, today these are some things that I know will be kind, compassionate, generous. I want to do these things today. So it's cultivating those ability to see beauty, appreciate beauty. I'd encourage people to create in their home, either at maybe even at their desk. I'm looking over here because I have my sort of work altar. It's like creating a little altar in your space. It could be a place you sit. It could be just a certain kind of bowl that you put a flower in every day. See, it's this attentiveness to beauty, goodness, value, dignity that I think gives us that kind of fuel. You know, like Alice Walker would talk about her mother's beautiful flower garden. Yeah. In the midst of terrible racism, she cultivated these gardens, and walk in nature. Walk outside. Even in a busy city, you can find places of beauty to rest and to just remind yourself that your life is beautiful, that your life has dignity, that you are a person with gifts and callings and talents to share. And I mean that with all the humility. You know, it does, just because you recognize your gifts and your value and dignity, it's not conceit or selfishness. It's valuing who you are at this time in this place in this whole cosmic journey.
And another act of gratitude.
Maybe I'll stop there because I could talk more, but Kelly, go ahead.
No, I love the gratitude journal. I taught
I do too.
a class on happiness, a FISEM on the pursuit of happiness a few years ago. And
Yeah.
we did a gratitude journal as part of that. And it increases people's happiness. I mean,
So what was it like? What kind of actual way of doing it?
so it literally every day they had to write, I think it was 3 things every day that they are grateful for. And what you talked about getting into a practice of it.
Yes.
And it's those types of practices and habits, whether it's meditation or a journal or a walk that you go, that it's this thing that you continue to do, which really just, it cements good feeling. And there's studies that show that it raises happiness, that people's level of how happy they are, that when they recognize and those things that they're grateful for and what good things they have in their life, it's just really positive feelings.
Yeah. I'd also could talk more, but I'll mention it. Learning to meditate, learning to breathe, whether you call that mindfulness meditation or Zen meditation or practicing the stillness of the heart, in Christianity, centering prayer. Like there are various tools or ways of being in meditation, but it's that breathing that we so take for granted. But I think in some sense spirituality could be defined by learning to be well with one's solitude. There's this community aspect, but learning to breathe in a time of stillness and quiet, like you can bring that into the most challenging situation. You over time, like you said, Kelly, practicing a little bit every day. I mean, ideally 20 minutes twice a day, to top, in a sense, to keep this, whether you call it centeredness or groundedness or mindfulness or open-heartedness. Spirituality is learning to live fully with one's solitude in the midst. And you can bring that into sitting on a bus or in the midst of even taking an exam. You take a breath, and that brings to mind the sense of goodness and wholeness and capability, without negating, those awful people over there.
And if you have that place of stillness, then when chaos and other stuff is going on, you hopefully you can find that place to sort of help weather some of that other stuff that's going on.
Yeah, I think they go together, that sense of being in a place of goodwill, respect for others, respect for yourself. Like it's not just what you're doing separate from everybody else. It's actually a being with others in a way that neither relies on negating them or putting them down or letting them control you the other way. So often in relationships, we may feel controlled by other people, or others are, we're trying to live up to others' expectations, or, Hussein has a lot more to say about that from the psychological, but we cultivating this, the breath, is so ancient in many traditions, and in both Hebrew, Greek, and Latin, the word for spirit is also breath.
Oh, nice. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah, so there's something there.
Yeah.
You don't need all this fancy technology or apps on your phone, but learning to breathe in your stillness, that I think you're going to ask me the next question. I'm going to wait because I don't want to blah onto it. But I have an answer for this that I want to talk about in a minute. So you want to ask your next question?
I will, yes. So
Okay.
I'll speak for myself. I've sort of thought about my own spiritual wellness, or just my wellness in general, comes from connection and community, and things that during COVID are in short supply because of having to shelter in place or isolation, and keeping your distance. And I don't have my church choir is not going here, so that was such a sense of being with other people and making music and being a part of that. So what do you have advice for folks on safe ways to find that connection and community these days?
Well, when you mentioned choir, I'm thinking about all these cool ways the technology, has people singing in this, together. Like we're human beings are innovative and creative. We're figuring it out. We're adapting, pivoting, exploring. And if it doesn't work, we try it again. The thing I hear a lot of people talk, and I myself feel this way sometimes, actually, maybe quite often. I feel lonely, or I feel alone. And then that can sometimes we fall into patterns thinking, well, how am I, I'm going to start eating more. I'm going to start binging on some stuff that isn't really healthy for me, or addictive patterns, I really think not so much about connection and community. I want to help or walk with people moving from loneliness and aloneness to solitude. See, solitude is a word or a state of being that has a kind of serenity to it in life. Maybe a more contemplative. Maybe you've heard your, transfer students may have heard this word, but there are deep contemplative paths in our religious traditions. And I don't see this as despairing, think of ourselves as mortal beings with a mode of solitude that we find ourselves at rest or at home in our solitude. I find it actually really a place of empowerment, or of peace and serenity. I kind of like that word, serenity. Not like surrender, but being at peace. Yeah. And I think these practices that we're talking about, because you can be in community with people and then suddenly feel so alone, like, oh my gosh, they're all, and so it's that sense of solitude that we take with us along the way, whether we're about to face a diagnosis of COVID or not. It's a humble term, I think, and but a good term. So that may not answer your question directly, but solitude is kind of that artistic space too, that space of knowing that healing is possible beyond what one expects.
Thanks. Yeah, it's nice.
Well, let's go back just a minute. From your previous question, is centered the same as being grounded? I mean, you talked about centered and grounded, and
you're asking a professor to nuance these words, or a chaplain to nuance these words. When I hear the word center, or when I use the word center, I kind of think of it more in a, like internally, like, when I'm sitting either in a chair or in a kind of mindfulness meditation, either myself or with others. Usually the mindfulness leader will talk about your spine and your head being like a tree, like in yoga, when you do the tree pose. I'm not a big yoga person, but I know this, like the tree pose, in the Hebrew Bible, the very first Psalm talks about being like a tree beside still water. I think of like centered, my trunk, my limbs, my roots, deep in the soil with good water, so I think of it kind of as myself, but even in describing it, I'm acknowledging things that are beyond myself, but I need them, like the water and the soil and the ground. And so when I hear the word grounded, I kind of think of that more like literally bare feet on the ground, part of nature, aware that I'm in a world larger than myself. So I think they need each other, these terms. Maybe it's more emphasis on, because even when you're grounded, it's still yourself that's grounded in this mystery or in this earth, in God's love. So I think they're wonderful metaphors. Yeah. In higher ed, we can appreciate metaphors, can't we?
We can definitely appreciate them.
So I have a super easy question.
Oh,
What are some things a person can do to begin to discover value, purpose, and meaning in life? Must be just a quick answer to that, right?
there is. And it's going to be as an individual, as a person, in a way. And it might be that the way we've been raised, those ways of finding meaning and purpose, or who we are in this amazing mystery, kind of don't fit anymore. I love this. Here's another metaphor or an image. As a gardener, you have little plants in a pot, and then you start to see the roots sticking out, and you realize it's becoming root bound. And in order for the plant to grow, you have to put it in a bigger pot. To me, that's what going to college is about. You're this little plant with so much potential, and you come in, and so it's that come to campus, come to higher ed, get online with Hamline University, and you're in this larger community of people and ideas and opportunities of experience. And so then your roots can grow bigger. So I would say be open, not just sort of holding on to what you know, but be explorers, be people of confidence that you can explore and create, and it doesn't cement you in for the rest of your life. You're an explorer, you're a journey, and some of that can be hard because what you learn may bring sorrow to your heart, or it also may, we then become aware of how we and our people have been part of things that have harmed people in the past. So there's a kind of learning that the human journey involves both possibility, but also working to restore what has happened, or writing our relationships in this world. For me, though, the simple answer for me is read poetry. I love reading poetry. And again, hats off to people like Julie Nearest and others in our, like Carolyn Holbrook and others who, with a poem, we can enter into new ways of seeing and feeling and being. You may find one person that you just want to read every poem they've ever, like one year, someone gave me, actually Julie gave me the Sabbath poems by Wendell Berry. And I took a year reading one poem a day. And it was probably the most profound thing. But I also, the poetry of Joy Harjo and Alice Walker, and there's so many young poets and in our time. I think poetry takes you then to feeling and thinking your way into values, purpose, meaning. So that would be my like short answer, but you can live a lifetime in one poem.
Yeah, yeah.
What is your favorite poem, Kelly and Kathy? Do you have a favorite poem? You all are literary
I
people.
have a favorite poem, but now it makes me want to read more poetry.
I've been reading some Minnesota poets lately, and there's an amazing poet community of artists and poets in Twin Cities in Minnesota. There's a lot out there. Yeah, it's awesome.
Good. So before we go, I was going to give you an opportunity to talk about the Wesley Center, so students really understand more about the Wesley Center.
Yeah. Let me say, because people might go, what is a Wesley?
Yes.
Is that a what or a who or a when? And since its founding, Hamline University has had a strong connection with the Methodist movement. I'll say that began in England. This fellow, John Wesley, as well as his brother Charles, who wrote tons of hymns. But John Wesley was a person who lived in a time when, the Industrial Revolution and people were finding themselves, working in coal mines or in factories, and children were being, brought into factories, and people going into debt were thrown into prison. And he was very concerned that churchy people, this would be the Anglican Church in England, but that churchy people were only concerned about wealth, royalty, class aspirations, and he wanted to reform all that. And he talked about doing all the good you can in the world, not in like a churchy sense, but in a faith in the world sense. And he also believed in do no harm. So those two go together when we talk about a Methodist heritage to Hamline. To do all the good, do no harm. They sound simplistic, but when we try to live that out, that's a real challenging thing. So the Wesley Center, there's a synergy of experiences. So we're co-curricular, and but we work quite often with classes and faculty that spirituality, service, and social justice, our programs try to bring an integration of those, some of them one or two or three. For example, we have a Muslim Student Association, we have Jewish Student Life, we have a Christian-based group called Love Boldly. And this year with COVID, of course, we're doing things differently. So we've had to pause our Catalyst spring break trips. And those in the past, students go together in groups of 10 to 12. I'm trying to think. Kathy, have you been on a Catalyst trip?
I have not been on
as a
Catalyst.
Colleague?
I should go. Kelly,
you did, Kelly?
Oh, well, it was before it was Catalyst. It was, I did an environmental justice trip to New Orleans.
Oh, you were on that trip with Matt? Okay, I'm sorry. Well, we can go back to that.
Yeah.
I was thinking, but that's like, environmental justice in New Orleans.
Mm-hmm.
We hope that a year from now, we're going to be back to planning, hopefully, so that over spring break, groups of students, for example, we have had trips to Arizona looking at immigration, to San Francisco looking at organizations that support LGBTQ communities in San Francisco, as well as food justice. We've had food justice in Milwaukee. We go to Washington, D.C. and look at policy and practice around homelessness. So students are, this is a key thing, these are student-led trips. So there's opportunities for student leadership development and a way to, you know, can have your class learning, but to be able to experience and bring together your lived experience with your study experience and your academic puts you in a place, I think, where, like you asked about discovering value, purpose, and meaning. Quite often people participate in these trips and they say, oh my gosh, I'm going to change my major and I'm going to look at environmental science because of going to New Orleans and Kelly was so cool. And, you know, you get to be a mentor and students mentor themselves, community and purpose together. We also have a after-school mentoring program that about 40 to 50 students in a normal year can be paid to be mentors. This is called the McVeigh Youth Partnership. And my colleague Jane Krentz and the students there are looking at online mentoring this year. But we're hoping that we'll be able to get back to there were 5 or 6 sites that Hamline students mentor after school. So this is an unusual year, but keep the Wesley Center on your wavelength for opportunities. We've had a program called Spirituality Scholars that involves students in once a week interfaith exploration meetings, and it's a stipended opportunity. So, but we work with the Hedgeman Center, we work with student activities and leadership. Our office is partners with the other programming, Spectrum, Women's Resource Center. So we look for that synergy beyond just our religious or political. That's what's big this fall. I hope every person who's listening to this video has registered to vote and found a way to vote, because we have Hamline Votes campaign 90-20. Here, do you see my little button? Wait, there it is. The 90-20. Hamline won an award 2 years ago. The highest number of students in a 4-year college, 63% of our students voted.
Wow.
And this year, for this election, we're hoping for 90% of our students. So Noor Mood is our Wesley Center colleague, because to do all the good, sometimes you just got to vote the good. So we're not telling you how to vote, but we're saying enact your values, your vision, your purpose. Bring your full self to voting. Okay, so check out Hamline Votes webpage.
Excellent.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much for taking some time with us today to talk about spiritual wellness and so many other things. It's been awesome.
It's
really
great.
appreciate it, Nancy. I just want to say thank you so much for your thoughts, and I feel so inspired.
Well, great. I'm gonna email you and see if you started keeping your little gratitude.
I'm going to do my gratitude journal starting tonight.
Oh, right. Great.
All right.
Well, any students can come and chat with me, make an appointment. I'm here on campus Mondays and Tuesdays, or we can chat over online. And I love talking about and walking alongside with others.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks so much.